Mark lived a quiet life in a suburban neighborhood. After years of training elite soldiers, he had retired from the military, choosing peace and routine over chaos. His small house was neat and organized, a reflection of his disciplined mind. The walls were decorated with photos of soldiers he had trained, medals, and certificates. But most importantly, he had Lily, his 12-year-old daughter, full of energy, curiosity, and an infectious laugh that could light up any room. On a warm afternoon, Mark was sitting in his home office, reviewing some training notes he still kept for himself. Even though he had retired, he liked to stay sharp. The papers were spread across the desk, pens and notebooks organized neatly. Outside, the sun glinted on the trees lining the street. The neighborhood seemed calm. Kids played in the yards, and neighbors chatted over fences. Life appeared normal. Suddenly, a sharp knock at the front door broke the silence. It was not the usual casual knock of a neighbor, it was firm, insistent, almost aggressive. Before Mark could react, Lily ran into the office, her eyes wide and filled with fear. "Dad! Dad! Some men are at the door. They say they are here for me," she shouted, her small hands trembling. Mark's heart skipped a beat, but he forced himself to remain calm. Panic would not help, not now. He quickly glanced at the window and saw 3 men standing outside. They were wearing dark uniforms that looked official, but something about them seemed wrong. The badges they carried were shiny, but the symbols were unfamiliar. Their movements were stiff and awkward. Real officers would have carried themselves with authority, but these men were different. "Lily, go to your room and lock the door. Stay inside and don't open it for anyone," Mark instructed firmly. Lily hesitated for a moment, but she trusted her father and ran to her room, locking the door behind her. Mark moved to the front door, his military training alerting him to every detail. The men were banging on the door now, shouting about neighborhood rules and fines. Their voices carried a threat, but it was clumsy, poorly rehearsed. They were trying to appear powerful, but Mark could tell they were not trained for real confrontation. He spoke calmly through the door, masking his growing suspicion. "I don't know what you are talking about. You cannot take my daughter." One of the men pushed the door slightly. "We have orders. If you don't comply, we will take her." Mark's eyes narrowed. He could see the fear in Lily's face from the window behind him. She was small, but her courage was strong. Yet she was a child. Mark felt a surge of protective instinct, a force he had never lost since leaving the military. He realized these men were not real officers. Real police would never threaten a child over neighborhood rules. These were imposters, criminals using the uniform as a disguise. That gave him an advantage, but it did not make the situation any less dangerous. Mark stepped back, thinking fast. He could not confront them directly without risking Lily. He needed a plan. He scanned the house for anything that could help. His office had cameras he had installed for security, and he quickly accessed the live feeds. He observed the men carefully. They were not coordinated. They argued quietly among themselves, unsure of how to proceed. Mark dialed the local authorities, pretending to be a concerned neighbor. He spoke calmly, "There are suspicious men at my neighbor's house. They are pretending to be officials. I think they might be dangerous." He did not mention Lily directly, wanting to avoid alerting the imposters. Instead, he described the men, their uniforms, and the black SUV parked outside. The dispatcher assured him that help would arrive soon. That gave Mark some time, but he knew it was limited. The men outside were becoming impatient. One of them tried the door handle, and when it did not open, he shouted, "Open up! We have authority." Mark moved quietly to the side, preparing for any sudden move. His military instincts told him to stay calm, observe, and wait for the right moment. He remembered all the training drills, all the lessons he had taught soldiers about patience, strategy, and precision. Those lessons were not just for soldiers, they were now for protecting his daughter. Suddenly, one of the men tried to kick the door open. Mark reacted instantly. He stepped out from behind the door frame, his voice firm and commanding. "Stop. If you take one step closer, you will regret it." The men froze. They had not expected resistance. They were confident that fear alone would make people comply. They did not know that Mark had trained men who faced real danger every day. These imposters were unprepared for a true challenge. "You don't know who I am," Mark continued, his tone calm but deadly serious. "Leave now, or I will call the real authorities, and you will face the consequences." The men hesitated. One of them whispered something to the others. They looked nervous. Mark could see that their plan was falling apart. But before they could retreat, one of them made a sudden grab for the door. Mark reacted with lightning speed. He stepped aside and used his training to block the intruder without harming him seriously. The man stumbled, and Mark grabbed the opportunity to slam the door shut, locking it quickly. Inside, Lily hugged her father tightly, her small hands clutching his arms. "Dad, I was so scared," she whispered. Mark knelt down, looking into her eyes. "I know, Lily. But you are safe now. I promise." He knew this was only the beginning. The men outside were likely to come back, but they did not know who they were dealing with. Mark was not just a retired instructor. He was a man who had trained the toughest soldiers in the world. He had faced danger and survived. And now, nothing would stop him from protecting his daughter. Mark set up the security system to record every move outside. He watched the black SUV drive away slowly, realizing that they might be scouting, planning their next move. He could not wait for the authorities alone. He needed to act, but carefully. Rushing without a plan could endanger Lily. He turned to Lily. "We need to stay calm and ready. I will make sure you are safe. Do you trust me?" Lily nodded, wiping her tears. "I trust you, Dad." Mark's mind worked quickly. He mapped out the neighborhood in his head, recalling all the escape routes, hidden alleys, and quiet paths. He planned how to track the imposters if they returned. He knew their movements would be sloppy, predictable. He had trained for situations like this, and he would use every skill he had to protect his daughter. The sun began to set, casting long shadows over the quiet street. Mark kept watch, his eyes sharp, his mind focused. He knew the imposters might try again, but he was ready. Nothing would surprise him. His daughter's safety was more important than anything else in the world, and he would not let anyone take her. Mark's calm presence reassured Lily. She began to feel safer, though she still clung to her father. They waited together, ready for whatever would come next. The quiet house was a fortress now, and Mark was its guardian. The day that had begun peacefully had turned into a test of courage, strategy, and love. And Mark was determined to win. Mark's calm focus did not last long. Just as the sun dipped lower in the sky, he noticed movement outside. The black SUV that had driven away earlier had returned. This time, it moved slowly, as if scouting. His instincts screamed danger. He looked at Lily, who was watching from behind the curtains. Her eyes were wide, filled with worry, but she trusted him completely. Mark knelt beside her. "Lily, I need you to stay quiet and follow my instructions exactly," he said. "No matter what happens, stay calm." Lily nodded. "I will, Dad." Mark moved to the back of the house, observing the SUV. Two men got out this time, wearing the same fake uniforms. Their movements were clumsy, unsure. They were pretending to be confident, but Mark could see through the act. They had a plan, but it was sloppy. He noticed that the SUV's doors were unlocked. A small window to exploit their weakness opened in his mind. But before he could act, one of the men rang the doorbell with a fake badge displayed prominently. "We are here for your daughter," he shouted, trying to sound authoritative. Mark's heart pounded, but he stayed calm. He knew direct confrontation now could risk Lily. He decided to watch, to understand their plan. The men began knocking harder, and when there was no response, one of them tried the door handle. Suddenly, the situation escalated. One man pushed the door hard, and the other quickly grabbed Lily through the narrow opening she had cautiously left when trying to peek outside. "Lily!" Mark shouted, but the men were quick. They pulled her toward the SUV and shoved her inside. The vehicle doors slammed shut, leaving Mark stunned for a moment. He took a deep breath. Panic would not help. He recalled his training: control, observation, and planning first. He moved to the street quietly, noting the SUV's license plate and direction. His military instincts switched on fully. Mark could not chase recklessly. He knew the neighborhood streets well, every alley, hidden path, and quiet lane. He ran to a nearby alley that offered a shortcut, keeping the SUV in sight. The imposters were not aware they were being watched so closely. They were relying on fear, not skill. He remembered his training sessions with elite soldiers. Every detail mattered: speed, positioning, timing. He analyzed the SUV's speed, its likely route, and where they might be heading. He made mental notes of intersections, side streets, and obstacles. Mark knew that confronting them immediately could endanger Lily. He needed a safe way to intercept. As he followed the SUV, he called local authorities again. This time, he provided detailed information about the license plate, the vehicle type, and the direction they were heading. The dispatcher assured him help was on the way, but Mark knew the response time could be too slow. He made a plan in his mind. If the SUV stopped, he could use stealth and strategy to incapacitate the imposters without putting Lily at risk. He considered every possibility: their panic, their mistakes, their overconfidence. Every untrained criminal leaves a pattern, and Mark was trained to recognize it. The SUV slowed as it turned into a less populated area. Mark ducked behind a fence and observed. The vehicle stopped near a small, abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the town. Mark crouched low, analyzing the scene. There were 3 men now, 2 outside and 1 holding Lily inside the SUV. They were arguing, their voices sharp and uncoordinated. Mark noted their mistakes: poor positioning, lack of awareness, and overconfidence. These were not professionals. They were dangerous because of ignorance, not skill. He crept closer, staying out of sight. He needed the perfect moment to act. Using techniques he had taught soldiers for years, he prepared to neutralize the threat without causing unnecessary harm. The key was precision, speed, and control. Mark's mind was clear. He visualized the sequence: approach silently, incapacitate the first 2 men outside, then secure Lily safely. His training kicked in fully. Every muscle, every movement, every breath was controlled. Inside the SUV, Lily was frightened but trying to remain calm. She remembered her father's words, "Stay calm and follow instructions." She peeked through the small window and saw Mark crouched in the shadows. Hope surged inside her. Mark noticed the moment. He moved quickly, a shadow among shadows. In seconds, he neutralized the first man outside with a precise move, ensuring he could not harm anyone. The second man froze in surprise, giving Mark the opportunity to take control. "Step back," Mark shouted firmly. "Leave her alone." The imposters were stunned. They had no idea they were dealing with someone trained to handle extreme danger. They had relied on fear and the element of surprise, but both had failed. Mark opened the SUV door carefully. Lily scrambled out and ran into his arms. "Dad," she cried, relief washing over her face. "I've got you, Lily." "You're safe," Mark said, holding her tightly. He scanned the area for any remaining threat. The third man tried to run but froze when he saw Mark's stance. With calm authority, Mark disarmed him quickly, making sure no one was hurt. Within minutes, the situation was under control. Lily was safe, and the imposters were secured. Mark contacted the authorities and waited for the real police to arrive. The fake HOA cops would face justice, but Mark knew the experience had been a dangerous reminder. Back home, Mark hugged Lily and reassured her. "You were brave, Lily. I am proud of you." Lily smiled weakly, exhausted but relieved. "I knew you would come for me, Dad." Mark's mind was already working on the future. He needed better security, more precautions. These imposters had tested him, and while he had won, it was a warning. The neighborhood could be peaceful, but danger could appear anywhere. That night, Mark sat in his office, reviewing every detail. He noted the mistakes of the imposters, their weaknesses, and the vulnerabilities of his own home. He planned for every possible scenario. His daughter's safety was his priority, and he would not allow anyone to threaten it again. The sun had set completely, and the neighborhood was quiet once more. Lily was asleep, exhausted from the day's terror. Mark watched over her, alert and vigilant. He knew the threat was over for now, but he also knew he could not let his guard down. Mark's quiet life had been shattered for a brief moment, but he had shown his daughter the strength of preparation, courage, and love. He had acted as both protector and strategist, and the lesson was clear: with focus and skill, even the most dangerous situations could be managed. And Mark knew this was only the beginning of a journey that would test his patience, intelligence, and courage even further. The night was quiet, but Mark's mind was far from calm. The fake HOA cops were not ordinary criminals, they had boldness and audacity. Their attempt to take Lily had failed, but Mark knew it could happen again. He could not risk leaving anything to chance. Every moment mattered, every movement needed attention. Mark decided to take action immediately. He began by reviewing the footage from his home security cameras. The recordings showed the imposters' faces clearly, as well as the license plate of the black SUV. Mark took careful notes, observing their behaviors. He noticed patterns. The man who had acted as the leader was quick to speak but slow to think, while the others were easily distracted. These weaknesses would be useful. After making a plan, Mark contacted the authorities again. He shared all details: vehicle information, suspect descriptions, and their likely strategy. He emphasized the urgency, making it clear that the suspects were dangerous and could try again. The dispatcher promised that officers would patrol the area, but Mark knew he could not rely on waiting. He had to act. He packed a small bag with essentials: communication devices, tools for surveillance, and a flashlight. Every item had a purpose. Then, he stepped out into the cool night air, moving quietly along the side streets. The neighborhood was dark, most houses asleep, and the occasional street light cast long shadows. Mark's eyes scanned every corner, every alley. He needed to anticipate the imposters' moves. As he moved, Mark considered the possibilities. The criminals could be hiding in abandoned buildings, parking lots, or even back alleys. They had already shown that they could act recklessly. That recklessness could be their undoing. Mark relied on his military training, remembering lessons from years of tracking and observation. Patience was just as important as speed. Hours passed, and Mark carefully followed the area where the SUV had been seen earlier. He noticed tire tracks leading toward the outskirts of town, toward a warehouse district. The area was quiet, industrial, and abandoned, perfect for criminals to hide without being noticed. Mark crouched behind a low wall, observing the surroundings. Suddenly, he saw movement. Two men emerged from the shadows, carrying equipment that suggested they were planning something. Their steps were heavy and uncoordinated, and they were not looking around carefully. Mark's eyes narrowed. These men were overconfident, and that made them predictable. He used his phone to take photos of the area, noting entrances, exits, and potential hazards. Then he moved quietly, staying in the shadows. His knowledge of tactics allowed him to approach without being seen. Every step was deliberate, calculated, and silent. After circling the area, Mark found a vantage point that gave him a full view of the warehouse. He could see crates and old machinery, and the dark shapes of the imposters moving inside. It was time to act, but he needed more information before making his move. Mark pulled out a small flashlight and carefully signaled to check for any hidden entrances. One of the imposters was near a side door, inspecting the locks. Mark took note. The men were distracted and focused on tasks, which made them vulnerable. He thought of Lily and how terrified she must be if they had returned. The thought made him even more focused. Every detail mattered now. He formulated a plan: approach silently, neutralize the men outside, secure Lily, and retreat safely. Precision was essential. Mark waited patiently. Time passed slowly, but he knew that any rushed decision could cost precious moments and endanger Lily. Finally, he saw an opening. The imposters had separated slightly, giving him a chance to act without alerting everyone at once. He moved quickly, using the shadows to hide his approach. His body was tense, ready for action, but controlled. The first imposter was near a crate, unaware of Mark's presence. A swift, precise move neutralized him without creating noise. The second man froze, confused by the sudden disappearance of his companion. Mark seized the moment. "Stay where you are," he commanded. His voice was calm but carried authority. The imposter raised his hands, realizing he was outmatched. Mark entered the warehouse carefully. He noticed Lily tied to a chair, her eyes wide but alert. Relief washed over him, but he did not show it. He focused on freeing her quickly and quietly. "Dad." Lily whispered, hope and fear mixed in her voice. "I've got you," Mark said, loosening the ropes and helping her stand. "We're getting out of here now." They moved together toward the exit, but one of the imposters had recovered and tried to block their path. Mark acted swiftly, using his strength and skill to control him without harm. The man struggled but quickly realized resistance was futile. Outside, the night air felt fresh and safe. Mark led Lily to a secluded path he knew well. The warehouse district was a maze, but Mark's memory of the area gave him an advantage. He moved cautiously, checking behind every corner for any other threats. After a few tense minutes, they reached the edge of a main road where Mark had parked his vehicle. He kept low, ensuring they were not followed. Lily clung to his side, exhausted but safe. Mark contacted the authorities again, giving the exact location of the warehouse. The real police arrived shortly after, arresting the imposters. Mark watched from a distance, satisfied that justice would be served. Back in the car, Lily rested her head on her father's shoulder. "I knew you would come," she said softly. "I will always come for you," Mark replied. "No one will ever take you from me." The night had been long and dangerous, but Mark's skills, patience, and determination had kept Lily safe. He knew that their life would never be completely free of threats, but he had proven that courage, preparation, and careful planning could overcome even the most daring criminals. As they drove home, Mark looked at Lily and smiled. She was safe, but the experience had changed them both. They had faced fear and danger together, and their bond had grown stronger. Mark knew the road ahead might still have challenges, but he was ready. With his training, experience, and love for his daughter, he could face anything. And he would, without hesitation, ensuring that Lily was never in harm's way again. The next morning, Mark did not rest. The previous night had been intense, but he knew the imposters were still a threat. They had been arrested temporarily, but someone else could take their place, or they could escape. Mark's mind was alert, focused on one goal, making sure Lily was completely safe and that these criminals would never come near them again. He began by analyzing every detail from the previous encounter. The warehouse, the SUV, the men, everything had weaknesses. The imposters had been untrained, careless, and overconfident. Those traits were their downfall, and Mark planned to use them again if necessary. Mark packed his gear carefully. This time, he prepared for every scenario: distractions, traps, or sudden attacks. He included communication devices, ropes, a flashlight, and tools that could help him secure the area. Every item had a purpose, every step had a plan. Lily watched quietly, understanding the seriousness of the situation. "Dad, are we going out again?" she asked, concern in her voice. "Yes, Lily. We need to make sure no one else can hurt us." "We need to finish this," Mark replied calmly. "Stay close to me, follow my instructions, and everything will be fine." Lily nodded, trusting her father completely. They moved toward the edge of town, where the imposters had been last seen. Mark knew they would be cautious after the last encounter, but he also knew they would make mistakes. Overconfidence was a common weakness, and he would use it. As they approached the area, Mark noticed the black SUV parked near an old warehouse again. The men inside were trying to plan, unaware that Mark was observing them from a distance. He crouched behind a stack of crates, watching carefully. Mark's mind worked like a chessboard, predicting each movement, calculating each possibility. He observed the imposters arguing about what to do next. Their leader was impatient, pushing the others to take action quickly. Mark smiled quietly to himself. Their impatience would be their undoing. He whispered to Lily, "We will go in carefully. You stay close, and do exactly what I say." Lily nodded, gripping his hand tightly. Mark waited for the perfect moment. The imposters were distracted, focused on their plans. He moved silently, using shadows and crates as cover. Every step was deliberate, controlled. When he reached the nearest man, he used a precise, nonviolent move to immobilize him. The man dropped to the ground, stunned but unharmed. The other impostors froze, realizing someone was attacking them. Mark did not rush. He assessed the situation, watching their reactions. One tried to escape, but Mark intercepted him quickly, blocking his path and taking control without causing injury. Lily stayed behind Mark, watching silently, her heart pounding. Mark's movements were calm, precise, and efficient. He had trained for situations like this, and now he was using every lesson he had ever taught. Finally, Mark reached the area where Lily had been tied the night before. He looked around, ensuring no surprises. The impostors had spread out, each making a mistake by isolating themselves. Mark used this advantage to neutralize each one carefully. He spoke firmly, "Stay down. No one needs to get hurt." The impostors complied, realizing they could not outmatch Mark. Their confidence was gone, replaced by fear and respect. Mark then led Lily toward the exit. They moved quickly but cautiously, making sure there were no additional threats. The night was still dark, and the warehouse district offered plenty of hiding spots for anyone who might try to intervene. Mark scanned every corner, every shadow. Outside, the air felt safe but tense. Mark kept Lily close, moving toward a side road he knew well. He had memorized every alley, every fence, and every possible escape route. The impostors followed cautiously, but Mark stayed ahead, controlling the situation. As they approached a narrow bridge leading to a main road, Mark noticed one of the impostors trying to flank them. He acted quickly, blocking the path and guiding Lily safely past him. The impostor hesitated, unsure how to respond. Mark used this moment to secure their position, ensuring Lily's safety. Finally, they reached a safe area where the real authorities had been alerted. Officers arrived quickly, taking control of the situation. The impostors were arrested properly this time, and Mark watched as justice was served. Lily sighed in relief, hugging her father tightly. "I knew you would protect me," she whispered. Mark smiled, holding her close. "I always will, Lily. Nothing will ever hurt you as long as I am here." The confrontation was over, but the lesson was clear. Mark had faced danger and prevailed, not with anger or recklessness, but with strategy, patience, and skill. He had used his experience to protect his daughter, showing her the importance of calm thinking and careful action. Back home, Mark reinforced security measures. Cameras, locks, and alarms were all checked and upgraded. Lily helped, understanding the importance of safety. Mark explained each step clearly, teaching her how to stay alert without fear. That night, as Lily slept peacefully, Mark sat in his office, reviewing the events. The impostors were arrested, but he knew that life would always have challenges. Preparation and vigilance were the keys to safety. Mark reflected on his role as a father. His military skills had kept Lily safe, but his love and attention were what truly protected her. Courage, intelligence, and care were his weapons, and he had used them well. He glanced at the photos on the wall: soldiers he had trained, medals he had earned, and the picture of Lily smiling brightly. All of it reminded him that strength came not just from training, but from responsibility, love, and courage. Mark felt a sense of calm. The confrontation was over, the impostors were in custody, and Lily was safe. But he remained vigilant, knowing that life could bring new challenges. He would face them, prepared and focused, ensuring that nothing would threaten his daughter again. For now, the neighborhood was quiet. Mark watched over Lily as she slept, proud of her courage and relieved at her safety. The night had been long, and the confrontation had tested both their patience and strength. But they had emerged stronger, wiser, and closer than ever. Mark knew one thing clearly: no threat could overpower him when it came to protecting Lily. And he was ready for whatever came next. The morning sunlight filled the small living room, casting warm light across the walls. Mark sat at the kitchen table, drinking a cup of coffee while reviewing security footage from the night before. Even though the imposters were arrested and taken away, Mark's mind remained alert. He had learned long ago that peace was precious but fragile. Lily entered the room, her hair still slightly messy from sleep. "Good morning, Dad," she said softly, approaching him. She looked tired, but there was a spark of relief in her eyes. "Morning, Lily," Mark replied with a small smile. "Sleep well?" Lily nodded. "Yes, but I keep thinking about last night. Were they really going to take me?" Mark reached out and gently held her hands. "They tried, yes, but they failed. And they won't be able to hurt you ever again. I made sure of that." Lily's eyes filled with admiration. "You were amazing, Dad. You saved me." Mark shook his head. "I just did my job as your father. My training helped, but it's love and care that make me stronger. Always remember, courage isn't just fighting, it's knowing how to stay calm and think clearly when things get dangerous." They sat together, talking quietly about the events of the night. Lily shared her fears, and Mark listened, explaining calmly how he had planned every move to keep her safe. It was a conversation that built trust and strengthened the bond between them. After breakfast, Mark checked on the neighborhood security. He spoke with the local police, giving them all the evidence he had collected: photos, videos, and notes about the imposters' behaviors. The authorities promised to follow through, ensuring the criminals faced proper justice. Mark felt satisfied knowing the threat was gone. Once everything was in order, Mark decided it was time for them to return to a normal life. He and Lily walked outside, enjoying the fresh morning air. The streets were quiet, children played farther down the block, and the neighborhood seemed peaceful once again. Lily looked up at him. "Dad, will people ever try something like that again?" Mark smiled, ruffling her hair. "Maybe, but we will always be ready. We learn, we prepare, and we stay vigilant. That's how we keep safe." They returned home and spent the day together, repairing small damages from the night before and upgrading safety measures. Mark showed Lily how to use the security system, teaching her small but important precautions. Lily listened carefully, absorbing every detail. She learned that safety was not just about locks and cameras, it was about awareness, preparation, and courage. As evening approached, Mark reflected on the experience. The imposters had thought they could scare him, but they had underestimated both his skills and his determination. They had failed because they relied on fear instead of planning, overconfidence instead of preparation. It was a lesson Mark wanted Lily to understand: strength comes from knowledge, patience, and careful action, not just force. Later, Mark and Lily sat on the porch, watching the sunset. The sky glowed in shades of orange and pink, a calm contrast to the chaos of the past night. Lily leaned against her father, feeling safe for the first time in hours. "Dad, do you think life will always have danger?" she asked quietly. Mark thought for a moment, then nodded. "Yes, life will have challenges, but that doesn't mean we live in fear. We stay strong, make good choices, and protect the people we love. That's how we face danger and still live fully. Lily smiled, understanding her father's words. She felt stronger, braver, and more confident. She realized that even in the scariest moments, her father would always be there, guiding her, protecting her, and teaching her to face challenges with courage. Mark felt a deep sense of pride. He had always believed that the greatest responsibility of life was protecting those you love. And now, he had demonstrated it, not just through words, but through action. He had faced danger, stayed calm, and ensured Lily's safety. The night grew darker, and the neighborhood quieted. Mark checked the doors and windows one last time, satisfied that their home was secure. He returned to the living room, where Lily was reading a book. "You did very well today, Lily," he said. "You stayed calm, listened to instructions, and trusted me. That's the kind of courage that matters most." Lily looked up and smiled. "Thanks, Dad. I learned a lot from you." Mark nodded, feeling the bond between them stronger than ever. They had faced fear together and emerged stronger. The imposters had been stopped, but more importantly, Lily had learned the value of courage, calm thinking, and trust. Before going to bed, Mark checked the security feeds one last time. Everything was peaceful. The streets were calm, and the imposters were in custody. He finally allowed himself to relax, knowing that for now, the threat had ended. He sat beside Lily as she drifted to sleep, holding her hand gently. "Sleep well, Lily," he whispered. "I'll always protect you." Mark stayed awake for a while longer, reflecting on the events. He realized that life could be unpredictable, but with preparation, awareness, and love, any danger could be faced and overcome. His daughter was safe, and that was all that mattered. By the morning, Mark felt a renewed sense of purpose. He would continue his life with vigilance, but he would also cherish the quiet moments, the laughter, and the bond he shared with Lily. Life was precious, and every day was a chance to protect, teach, and grow together. Mark and Lily continued their day, stronger and more connected than ever. The neighborhood had returned to its peaceful rhythm, and Mark knew he had secured more than just his home. He had secured his daughter's confidence, trust, and safety. In the end, the experience had not only tested them but had strengthened their bond. They had faced fear together and learned that courage, preparation, and love were more powerful than any threat. Mark looked at Lily, her bright eyes and smiling face reflecting the morning sunlight. He knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, prepared, strong, and unafraid. The imposters had failed, the danger was over, and life returned to a peaceful rhythm. Mark had fulfilled his duty as a father, and Lily had learned the strength of trust, courage, and love. Together, they were ready for anything the future might bring.